This talk is actually in two parts, and I'll be talking about lithium, and Trevor Beardmore will actually be talking about graphite. On the one side of the slide, you've got a map of Western Australia showing where the mines, deposits and prospects of lithium are. The red dots are those that are lithium dominant, and the blue dots are mainly tantalum deposits with minor lithium. Australia was the world's largest supplier of lithium in 2014 and 15, and most of that came from Greenbushes in Western Australia. And Greenbushes is the world's largest single hard rock deposit of lithium. It comes second after brine deposits in South America. Comes third, sorry, after brine deposits in South America. And as you've already heard, Western Australia also contains a number of other significant lithium deposits. They're all pegmatite deposits. We don't have any brine deposits that have been reported to date. And Western Australia is well placed to supply lithium to the world from pegmatites until brine production in South America ramps up to meet demand. These are the lithium projects that have resources. The main one is Greenbushes. It's still ahead of all the others. This is actually a 2013 resource. I don't know whether Pat's going to update that this afternoon. Then we've got Pilgangoora. There are two projects at Pilgangoora, and then Mount Marion and Mount Catlin. This is grade tonnage. Pilgangoora has just overtaken Greenbushes, according to the figures that I've got, for tonnage, but Greenbush is still way ahead on grade and also the total amount of lithium in the deposit. And I'd have to say that these plots are on the lithium flyer that's out on the table. We produced that lithium flyer in March of this year, and we've had to update it twice since because the resources keep increasing. I'll just go into Greenbushes. I hope I'm not stealing any of Pat's thunder. The main lithium mineral at Greenbushes is spodumene. That's lithium pyroxene. Production of spodumene at Greenbushes commenced in 1985, and current production is around about 400,000 tonnes. I heard 420,000 tonnes per annum. This is a geological map of the Greenbushes region. The Greenbushes pegmatite actually postdates granites in the area by about 50 million years, and it's therefore unrelated. This is unusual in that pegmatites are usually related to granites, and in this case it appears that the pegmatite is synmetamorphic and syntectonic. It's formed along the Donnybrook Bridgetown shear zone under conditions of medium to high temperature and medium pressure metamorphism. I've put some references there. South Greenbushes and Smithfield also lie near this zone, which is, so you can probably look at that as a highly prospective area to look. Pilgangoora, up in the Pilbara. There are two projects, as I mentioned here. There's Pilbara Minerals and Altura, and both of these projects are at feasibility stage. Here the pegmatites are shallow dipping, and they're hosted by mafic schist after basalt. Londonderry is one of the oldest pegmatite producers. 120 tonnes of lepidolite was produced from Londonderry in 1974 and 1981. Mount Marion is more recent, but resources here are now at 60.5 million tonnes at 1.36% lithium, and the lithium's present here as spodumene. Recent feasibility has shown that the project is technically feasible and economically viable. Pegmatites at both Mount Marion and Londonderry are hosted by metabasalt and ultramafic rocks and lie close to shear zones, the Silica shear zone in the case of Mount Marion. And I've just put a cross-section there of Mount Marion. Mount Catlin, historic production took place of tantalum from pegmatites at Mount Catlin. Spodumene production commenced in 2010 and continued to 2012 when it ceased for a while, but it's just recommenced this year. Here you've got flatly dipping pegmatites in felsic volcanics, the Annabelle volcanics, and they're possibly related to the tonalite in that area. Well, spodumene is the main lithium mineral that's being worked at the moment, but lithium micas, lepidolite and zinwaldite, are also possible sources of lithium, and innovative low-cost processing is currently being evaluated by several operators, and that could revolutionise mining of lithium-bearing silicates. And it could also mean that there will be processing of existing tailings dumps to recover the lithium micas. The products would include high-value lithium carbonate and lithium hydroxide, together with byproduct potassium sulfate and fluorine. Now I'll just pass over to Trevor Beardmore, who will talk about graphite.
Thank you, Lee. I don't know whether you wanted to just introduce me as well before.
Okay, follow it if you want. Talking on the fly here. Yeah, Trevor's worked with the Geological Survey for 4.5 years as manager of GSWA's Minerals Geoscience branch, leading teams that undertake studies of mineral systems in WA and run the High Logger facility. Previously, he completed a PhD at James Cook on the metallurgy of copper gold mineralisation in eastern Mount Isa inlier, and spent 5 years teaching earth sciences at the University of PNG, and previously 17 years in mineral exploration as a technical specialist to Wiluna Mines, Great Central Mines and Homestake Barrick. That covers it.
Pretty much. Thank you very much, Matthew, and good morning, everyone. My presentation will be probably as equally brief. I won't keep you from your morning tea. My background is largely in gold and base metals, so the niche commodities like graphite are a little bit outside my area of expertise. However, I'm hopefully reasonably placed to let you know what commodities we actually have in the state. The diagram here is just to illustrate that, yes, despite the excitement about the new technology applications of graphite, graphite still does have a very stable market in some of the more traditional uses, such as refractories and dare I say, the humble lead pencil as well. So there's still a demand there. So nevertheless, how is WA placed to potentially provide and contribute to the demand for graphite as and when it expands into these new specialist niches? We have about 96 recorded graphite occurrences, ranging anywhere from an intersection in drilling or an outcrop up to well-defined resources in the state. Most of them are of the flake and amorphous graphite variety, and the majority of those are actually the basically metasedimentary hosted styles, and they're concentrated, as you can see, in a number of areas in WA associated with Archean and up to Mesoproterozoic graphitic schists and gneisses, which, as I've just mentioned, are essentially the metamorphosed equivalents of carbonaceous sedimentary rocks. There are occasional or sporadic vein-hosted occurrences associated with Proterozoic pegmatites and paraneises, Those of you who are familiar with WA's resources might be familiar with the Ajana deposits. And there are occasional, very rare disseminated flake graphite hosted occurrences in weathered pegmatites, and the Katanning occurrence, which is down in the southwest there, is the prime example of that, but we don't know much about those. There's three known types of graphite deposit in Western Australia. As I say, the majority are the schist and gneiss hosted ones. I pose the question here, we don't really know what the potential for magmatic or contact metasomatic graphite might be. No one's been exploring for those as far as I know in Western Australia. There's at least one occurrence in Queensland I can think of, the Esmeralda deposit in far north Queensland, which is an example of the magmatic type. But I just pose the question, do we have these? And they're potentially quite high grade. Of those 96 occurrences, or in those, we recognise at the survey 12 what we call active graphite projects. They're listed there. Again, they're scattered across the state, largely again concentrated in particular areas. The ones I've listed in red there are the ones where there are actually now defined resources. So Denali River and Munglanup River in the far southern part of the state, Yalbra in the Gascoyne, and of course the Macintosh deposits up in the East Kimberley. And of course, going along with those, there's a range of companies who are active in that area. Western Australia has been a producer of graphite in the past. It's not producing graphite yet, but in the past it's produced up to about 219 tonnes of graphite, as far as we can tell from historical records. The bulk of that has come from the Denali River and Munglanup deposits in the far south of the state. There's another 66 tonnes of graphite that was shipped out in the early part of the 20th century. We know not from where. It's quite likely that some of it came from the southern part of the state, but perhaps not all of it. As I mentioned, there are 4 projects in Western Australia that do have defined resources. The 2 big ones, of course, are at Macintosh and Yalbra, illustrated there on the map. You'll notice that 3 of them are relatively high grade, sort of 16 to 20% there. The Macintosh deposits, although they're very high tonnage and contain graphite, are actually a relatively low grade at the lower end of the spectrum that we saw in Andrew's graphs. So the 2 most advanced projects are the Macintosh one in the East Kimberley and the Yalbra one in Gascoyne. And so we'll just briefly look at the settings of those. And, just before that, here's the equivalent grade tonnage diagram for the defined resources in Western Australia. And Holbert's Main, you can see there, is up in towards the top right of the diagram there. That's largely because of its very high grades. It's still relatively low tonnage. Macintosh graphite deposits, they, as I mentioned already many times, are in the Halls Creek origin. They were discovered in 2011, and Hexagon Resources have been very busy trying to define just how much graphite they have. The resources that are defined there are in 4 main deposits, which are at Wahoo, Barracuda, Emperor and Long Tom, but there are at least 11 other prospects in the region there, and so plenty of scope for expanding the resources there. The diagram on the right is just a summary diagram from courtesy of Hexagon, illustrating the Barracuda deposit, which I can't show you that. Where is it? Just there. So the total indicated and inferred resources are 17.2 million tonnes at 4.63% total graphitic carbon for just under 800 kilotons of contained graphite. Whether that can be extracted or not remains to be seen. And what have we done? Okay, moving on to Yalbra. In the Gascoyne province, this prospect was originally drilled in 1974, so it's taken a little while to get off the ground. At the moment, Buxton has defined 6 steeply dipping zones containing flake and amorphous graphite. Only the Yalbra 1 and Yalbra 1A deposits of those 6 have a defined resource which totals about 4 million tonnes at a relatively high grade, 16.2% of total graphitic carbon for about 650 kilotonnes of graphite. And these figures, of course, we've extracted from public releases from the companies, and we rely very much on the industry to provide us with the information that does go into our MINDEX database. Buxton do tout themselves as having the highest grade graphite resource in Australia. I'm sure there are probably a company or two out there that might contest that, but they certainly have a very large resource. Now, that's pretty much it for what's going on. So 96 occurrences, 12 projects and 2 main resources. Gold Terrace is presently exploring down in Munglanup at the Holberts Main and Holbert South deposits. They have defined resources down there, and they're very high-grade resources, but still fairly small resources. Having said that, of course, there's plenty, because of the nature of the mineralisation, the graphite mineralisation in Western Australia, there's plenty of scope to expand any of those resources, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more news from companies as time goes by, and hopefully we'll see some of those actually come into production and contribute to the global supply of graphite. Now, for anyone who wants to find out about graphite in Western Australia, we do have the advantage that we have Mineral Resources Bulletin 26, which was published just late last year, thanks to recently retired Mike Featherston, who was our industrial minerals person there. So I urge you to check out that. You can get any of our publications on the web. It is a little bit out of date already. Springdale is a recently announced discovery, again down in the southern part of Western Australia in the Albany-Fraser origin. So that's not in Mineral Resource Bulletin 26, but you can check out the industry releases there, and we have captured it into MINDEX as well, which is the other main source that I urge people to go to find out about not just our graphite resources in Western Australia, but also any other commodities we have there. And of course the graphite flyer, which as with lithium, we've been scrambling constantly to try and keep up to date, because it has been a very active industry. And again, we have copies of the graphite flyer there as well. So that's pretty much it. So thank you very much, and plenty of time now for morning tea.